You ready? Welcome back, Star Wars fans, to another episode of Coruscant Radio Underground. I'm Andrew, and I'm here as always with Merisha.
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year, everybody. So we're recording on New Year. That wasn't really planned.
It wasn't, but yesterday was our anniversary, so we didn't record yesterday.
True. We were gonna.
We were gonna, but we decided to take a nap instead. Maybe.
I don't remember.
No, I was working on a project. It was really romantic. I spent the whole day playing with.
She spent the whole day playing with her Christmas present.
I did.
So
it's true.
Got Merisha a new toy for her creative stuff, and she spent all day making a Kylo Ren helmet.
It's true. It looks pretty cool. And if he destroys it the first time he wears it, I'm going to kill him.
He's gonna.
No, he ain't. I'm threatening. This is when you make costumes for children. You have to issue threats.
True. So we just wanted to drop in and do a little quick talk about Book of Boba Fett.
Absolutely.
I will be on, if you're watching this today, which is New Year's Day, I will be on tomorrow night on the Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast with Ro and Chantel. And I believe
wasn't invited.
Rob, I think they wouldn't care if you showed up.
Let's see how it is.
And Rob, I believe, from the Jedi Temple Archives, who I believe is finally getting his podcast up and going again.
Yeah, we need to get him to come back and talk
Wheel of Time.
Wheel of Time, yeah.
No, we're working on that. We're working, Rob. If you're watching this, we are working on some times to have more voices who know what they're talking about with Wheel of Time, because clearly I don't. I did buy the first book. I'm going to read it in January.
He won't even watch it.
I'm going to watch it.
Hey, love, let's watch Wheel of Time. He's like, let's watch YouTube videos instead. Well, you know, everybody sells it.
I am supporting other creators. Independent creators.
Right, by not watching it and just getting other people to come talk about it.
By watching YouTube channels.
YouTube channels. Right. Perfect.
So. No, I am happy though to hear that it sounds like Rob's starting his show back. And
yeah,
it looks
exciting.
like Pizza and Parsecs might finally have recorded something too.
Yay!
So glad to have some of our Red 5 family kind of back in action.
Mm-hmm.
But
some of our OG group.
Yeah. But we wanted to talk about Book of Boba Fett. And,
yes.
So we watched it twice.
Yeah.
And I ultimately decided that on the first time, I think on the first go round, I was watching it on way too little sleep.
Yeah.
Because I walked away just going, I don't know if I even care to watch it anymore. Mm-hmm. I watched it again. I felt totally different about it. I still think there's some things that need to be addressed. But it's hard to do when you only saw 30 minutes of a show that's what? I don't know how many episodes. It's going to be eight episodes. Have you heard? I don't
know.
But I mean, you've only seen like one piece.
Yeah.
I do wish that a 30-minute episode, and this was just, it's after you cut the credits off, it was 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. Shows like this, like where can you go on TV and find like real action dramas that are only 30-minute shows?
Yeah.
Like, you got to be at least 45 minutes. I mean, when you watch a show on TV, when you go on network TV and you watch a 1 hour show, it's not a 1 hour show. It's a 45-minute show.
Right.
But that's like, for this kind of show, I just really feel like that's the bare minimum to get enough in. I feel like every once in a while, I do like the freedom of the streaming service where they don't all have to be cookie cutter and fit in the exact same mold. So you don't have to cut a scene for time. You don't have to add a scene for time. You can make the show exactly what you want it to be. But I kind of wondered with this one, my biggest gripe is that it, upon my first watch especially, was that it was too short.
Yeah, I kind of felt like it got to the end and I was like, we're done? Like, that's all we're doing today?
Yeah.
Was like Boba Fett meets the Tuskens and intimidates some people, but not really. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it felt like it got finished and it felt a little incomplete, maybe.
I think that's my biggest gripe, is it feels like it was all set up with very little substance in some places. Mm-hmm. I feel like, so I know a lot of people aren't liking the Tusken Raider story. And actually, before we go any further forward, I do want to point out that we are talking spoilers here. So if you haven't watched it,
spoilers.
If you haven't watched it, go watch it before you watch this, because we're going to talk spoilers.
All the spoilers.
For the record, we don't really even do non-spoiler reviews around here, because I feel like when you try to do that, you wind up spoiling stuff anyway.
But honestly, here's the thing about this episode. There's not that much to spoil.
I disagree with that, actually, on rewatch, but I kind of want to walk through it in order. But that is my biggest gripe, is I feel like, because I feel like that the story, like I feel like I like where they're going. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's, I like a lot of what I saw, but if you're going to start a show off with that short of an episode, then please drop 2. Mm-hmm. Like the 1 a week thing, I don't mind it. Like, for the sake of doing stuff like this, it's way better for us. Mm-hmm. I like dropping everything at once, but I mean, frankly, like, we're not going to watch more than like 2 hours of TV a day anyway. So if you drop it all at once, it's going to take me a week to watch a show. Like, we're watching Cobra Kai right now, but it's going to take me a week to get through that. I would love to just sit down today and watch the whole thing, but I don't have time.
It's also not one to sit down and watch with the kids. It's easier to binge a whole show if you can binge it with the kids.
That's true. Yeah. So let's step back, and we'll kind of come back to those final thoughts about what we thought they should have done different or whatever, kind of at the end. But, I love the shots we got at the beginning. We open up with the twin sons of Tatooine. We see Jabba's palace. We see all the old familiar stuff, which I'm never going to complain about. Right.
Patton Oswalt's pitch there.
Yeah, So we open up. I mean, we see it, and Boba's in the bacta tank, which we kind of knew he must have been using a bacta tank. So this is he's still using it. I don't know. I'm assuming this falls after the end of The Mandalorian. I don't know how specific they've been, and I don't know if some of this could have happened in like an interim between a couple of those episodes, between the time that Grogu's taken and the time they go to rescue Grogu and Boba's with him. Like, I don't know if it's all after or if there's some that's taking place in the interim. I think it's all after.
I think that's kind of the impression I'm getting, is that it's all after.
I think my only complaint there would be that when we see Boba in Mandalorian, like, he doesn't seem to still need healing. He's a one-man wrecking crew. Now, granted, he gets beat up on pretty bad by the what I have been calling the parkour assassins, because I don't know what else to call them yet. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming they're the mayor's men.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of feel like he's probably got some kind of internal damage. Like, you can get up and you can get your adrenaline going, you can get out and you can, wreak some havoc, and then you just need to go recuperate.
Well, like, I mean, so when blood loss and dehydration and low oxygen levels are a pretty nasty thing. And so that's what that's certainly what he was suffering from, not to mention exposure to the sun or suns. But we open up, we see him in the bacta tank, and we get flashbacks. I like the flashbacks. I like that we're going back to see how he got out, first of all. Mm-hmm. I know there's some that wanted him to be, to blast out with his jetpack, guns blazing, but like, I think there's a lot less story if he just flies out and he's okay.
Right.
Like, I mean, it would be cool, but I also don't want to turn a man into a superhero here. Like, for the people that don't want Star Wars to be Marvel, don't start by making your characters essentially superheroes. That's honestly the biggest problem with some of the expanded universe. Mm-hmm. And before you come after me, I love the expanded universe. I own lots and lots of those books and love them. Some of them are absolutely dreadful.
Yeah.
They are. Some of them are bad. Some of the comics were even worse than some of the books. And Luke Skywalker, as much as I love that character, absolutely, maybe my favorite fictional character of all time. In some of those books, Luke Skywalker became a superhero. It went from having, these sort of unexplained abilities to just being a superhero. Invincible.
Yeah.
So, I feel like if we want it to feel, we're not in our universe, but these are humans.
Right.
So we want them to feel like humans, and we want to relate to them. And so I don't mind that. I mean, first of all, I don't think we're given any idea how long he's actually in that pit, but he had to have been in there a long time.
Yeah. I mean, long enough for the wreckage to be gone.
No, the wreckage is still there.
Is it?
On the hill. When he comes out of the pit, it's on the hill behind him.
But everybody's gone. Like, there's there's nothing still. Nobody's still hanging around. Luke and Leia and Han are all gone. Lando's
Everything's gone. Now, the tentacle that is shot off is at least what that appears to be, still laying there in the sand. Mm-hmm. So, we figure he's maybe been in there a few days or something. Mm-hmm. Not as long as that poor stormtrooper whose armor is almost digested. Yeah. But actually, I like it, and it's the funniest thing. Like the Patton Oswalt, his little spiel from Parks and Rec.
Best thing on Parks and Rec ever.
Syncs up exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think that was an accident.
No, probably not. But I do like it. I love that he comes out. I love the all white that he's in, the white jumpsuit, which is a couple of things. One, it's a kind of, I think, a callback to the we see the clones wear a white jumpsuit in the Clone Wars and in the animated series. We see at least some of the clones, and then we see I think the big thing is what that white, because even his skin is white. He's come out of the belly of this beast. It's a rebirth. Mm-hmm. He came out different.
If you've never seen a newborn baby, they come covered in white goo.
But it's symbolic. He came out different than he went in. Mm-hmm. This is a new starting point for Boba Fett. Mm-hmm. The Jawas, we knew the Jawas were going to take the armor. They pretty much did that exactly how I expected. The Jawas show up in the night, find him mostly dead, and strip the armor. I think one of my favorite shots, because it's the combination of the music used and the shot, was the Sand People, the Tusken Raiders walking out of the desert and finding him there. One of the things that I always like to talk about is, Tatooine is Dune. Tatooine is Arrakis.
Yeah.
George Lucas clearly loved Dune. Mm-hmm. He even has a character, at least, I don't know if Lucas named the character, I assume he did, but Dengar is a reference to a lot of the names that we see on Arrakis. Dengar is still Gar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, we have these references, and Dune has always, or Tatooine has kind of always been this thing that he pulled from, because he pulled things from a lot. That's why Star Wars was so successful from the start, at least in a lot of people's opinion, was that it had built-in nostalgia. Mm-hmm. It builds on these things like the spaghetti westerns and Buck Rogers and all these classic science fiction shows, movies, comics,
just
radio
tropes.
shows, and just general tropes from older science fiction.
Yeah.
That was the most Dune-looking thing. The Tuskens are the Fremen.
Yeah.
And that was the most Dune-esque thing that I've ever seen in Star Wars, and I loved it.
Well, right down to the fact that they always are covered when they're out.
Right.
Like, no, we've never seen Sand People with their wrappings off.
They're always covered.
Right. Has that been established in the new canon?
I think so.
Or I know that was kind of the old way.
I don't know if that's been reestablished in any comics or not.
Okay. But also, you only ever see the Fremen out of their sieges completely covered.
Yeah, if they're outside of the seats, they're covered.
Yeah.
So, I just thought that was worth mentioning. I think that they leaned into a lot of aesthetics in this, including both Ray Harryhausen and Edgar Rice Burroughs and Frank Herbert. You see, and then the old spaghetti westerns. I mean, this is like, you could strip away the things that make this Star Wars,
Yeah.
and it's a spaghetti western.
Yeah.
Like it's, down to the music, the shots, the Boba Fett being led away, being dragged behind the bantas. I mean, what did you think up to that point where we see him dragged off? What did you think up to that point? I mean, that all happens in the first 5 minutes.
I mean, it was all pretty much kind of, I think, like we thought it was going to go. Like, basically, just the information we had about him in The Mandalorian. It's like, this was kind of the backstory we'd all sort of filled in our heads.
Right.
And it established it, which is what I think it needed to do. And yeah, and the music and the aesthetic is great. And especially since they've now made a Dune movie, I expect to see increasing kind of callbacks both directions.
Yeah.
Although I think Dune they intentionally stayed away from tried to avoid feeling like Star Wars.
I think you have to, right? Like,
I
if you
think
want
you
to
do.
build something successfully on its own, like, the first thing you don't want people to do is go, oh, it's a Star Wars ripoff.
Right.
Especially when you're making something that people don't understand. Dune
Right.
is not a widely read sci-fi book anymore.
Right.
If you're going to read 10 sci-fi books in your life, it's on that list.
Right.
But most people have never read it. Most people
Right.
alive today have never read it.
Right.
So,
But I think it's interesting that this show is evoking a little bit of the kind of feel that the Dune movie had, 3
Yeah.
months ago.
yeah. No, I agree with that.
And so I think that as it goes forward, you're going to get a little more of that feel. I think that Dune is going to continue to influence the way Star Wars looks going forward.
And that's great.
Just because it's kind of relevant again.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think that Denis Villeneuve will intentionally lean away from things looking or feeling Star Wars. One, because it doesn't need to, and I think where it does, I think you will always be able to go back and point at the books and go, no, this came from here.
Yeah.
But it's with so many people not being overly familiar with Dune. In fact, a lot of people keep calling this it's a pet peeve. It's not a big deal, but it's this is the Dune remake. It's like,
Yeah.
not exactly. If Dune was an original, if the Dune movie, the Lynch Dune, was an original property that had not been written years before, then I would agree this was a Dune remake. But
That's the issue
that movie's barely Dune.
That's the same issue Ben-Hur had a couple of years ago, though. A whole bunch of people were upset that it wasn't enough like the Ben-Hur movie that they loved as a kid. And they were like, well, it's not based on the Charlton Heston movie. It's based on the book.
Right. And that's the thing. You can't please people with stuff like that because it's either going to it's the same thing that happens with the Disney live action movies, even the ones that have been okay. Some of them have just not been very good, but some of them have been good, but they're live action versions of an animated movie.
Well, like
They're literally
Cinderella.
a remake. And
Cinderella just didn't look anything like the first one.
right.
And Beauty and the Beast was like, it's just exactly the same.
Yeah. Despite the amazing technical undertaking of The Lion King. Probably not. I mean, the first one is one of the most beloved animated movies of all time. So, like, I understand why people didn't like it as much as the original because it's a rip-off and it's not quite as charming as the original.
It's basically beat for beat the same movie.
But it's beat for beat the same movie, and it's pretty amazing technically. So from the technical side, I appreciate it. From the story side, I don't have a lot of use for it because I feel like the first one did it better. But it's like you're never going to please everybody.
Yeah.
And in fact, when you're doing something like that, it's even harder because it seems like people are just split down the middle. If you make it the same, people are going to scream that it's different. And if you make it different, they're going to scream that it's not the same. It doesn't help that you've got people that will take both sides of that issue depending on the movie.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people out there in the entertainment YouTube realm that are contrarians.
No.
Like you? Are you a contrarian?
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
So contrary all the time.
Anyway, so we cut to, we stay in the flashback. We kind of end the scene with the Boba being dragged away. We pick back up with, and I think we even have a cut back to him in the bacta tank. And then we cut back to, he's tied up in the Tuscans' village with a Rhodian.
A red Rhodian.
He tries to escape, tricks the Massive, uses the Massive's teeth to break his binds, tries to run away. Ends up having to fight one of the Tuscan warriors in the desert, and it doesn't go well.
Right.
We always would suspect that Boba was okay hand-to-hand combat, but,
Yeah.
He's a weapons guy.
Yeah.
And in addition to being in bad shape, I think he just gets his ass handed to him because he's not as equipped for that kind of fighting. And I think that we're going to see that because the Boba Fett that we do see later, because this is all before Mandalorian, everything's happening here. So I think by the time we see the Mandalorian, he's a pretty scary hand-to-hand fighter by that point.
Yeah.
So we're gonna so we see this, we see I think that's pretty bad. I mean, he loses the fight. I think that's foreshadowing a lot of what's coming. And we kind of break scene. We come back to present day. So what do you think? I mean, this episode, I think that's one of the things that makes this episode feel off. I feel like if they had just done this whole episode as a flashback and then woke up where people are coming to line up to pay tribute, that the episode would feel better. I feel like a lot of shows do this. Mandalorian did it some, but not this much. We were getting those flashbacks of why he hated droids and how he, what happened to his family. This one,
They weren't lengthy like
they
this.
weren't lengthy, and it feels disruptive to the pacing of the show.
And that's the thing, it's switching back and forth time periods like that. There's a real art to it. And it's kind of become the thing to do in TV shows. Like there a lot of TV shows, this is sort of just their trope. Like This Is Us is complete, the whole first episode you didn't realize that it was taken, you had different timelines going on.
Right.
And it's hard to do well though. And it really, I don't feel like this show just nailed that. Like I said, it's tricky to start with. And that's not really how this show has worked ever with the whole timeline jumping thing.
Right.
And so I think you're right. I think that
Well, we spent more time in flashbacks than in the present.
Right. And
I just think we should have just spent the whole episode in the past, in the flashback.
Yeah. And I think that would have been better. Pacing wise, it's a pacing thing.
It is.
All of the information was good. I enjoyed the whole episode, but the pacing was a little weird.
So here's kind of my question about the flashbacks. I'm a little concerned that we're going to do the whole season this way. That we're going to do all 8 episodes, or maybe the first 7, or maybe all 8, where we're telling 2 stories. I mean, that's what they're doing with the flashback. We're telling a story that happened in the past, and we're telling the story that's happening in the present. So we're splitting time between 2 stories from the same person's perspective.
Right.
It's a common storytelling technique. It does work. But again, I find it disruptive. And I would really kind of like for them to just get the whole story of the time, because I think this time with the Tuscans is really important to who Boba Fett becomes.
Right.
I think that it's going to be important to the way he chooses to lead. It's going to be, it reinvents him as a warrior.
Right.
I mean, I think pretty clearly he's building towards becoming a member of the tribe.
yeah.
I think we're wearing the Tuscan robes in the present.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's an accident. I think it's a part of who he is now. I mean, but how do you feel about that? Like, do you wish they would just go ahead and kind of finish it up in the first 2 or 3 episodes and then tell the new story?
Yeah,
or?
no, I'm not interested in doing this whole jumping back and forth thing the whole season. I'd be a little disappointed if that's the direction they go.
Yeah.
I'll still watch
same.
it. I'll still enjoy it, but they didn't nail it with the pacing in episode 1. And if they didn't nail it in episode 1, I just don't know. I don't think it bodes well for that particular style of storytelling for the rest of the season.
No, not at all. Like I said, I think that is the number one issue with episode 1 of this. That, and I think that they kind of cut it off so quickly that you're kind of like, well, I was just kind of starting to get into it, and you ended the episode. And
right.
So I feel like the first one still should have been longer, or give us 2.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they did with Hawkeye. And I don't know if... I kind of think they did it with Hawkeye because they wanted to end it on Christmas.
Yeah.
But the first episode of Hawkeye was largely world building. And I think they helped it tremendously by doing that and then giving us more.
Right.
Like giving us some action and some other stuff instead of just that first setup episode. I feel like this one is basically all world building. And then we don't get anything else. I mean, there's action in it, and the action's good.
Right.
We get... what did you think about the costumes? I've heard some people say that and I don't think it's necessarily fair. I do think that maybe sometimes Mos Espa feels a little too clean, a little too pristine in places. But it's a bigger, wealthier city than Mos Eisley.
Well, and there are... I mean, so the cantina they go in, it's not a...
It's not a dive bar.
It's not a dive bar. It's not, like you kind of get the impression that there's stuff going on there, but it's not a... It's not like a seedy place. It's, even if you... I mean, okay.
No, it's
here's
your
the thing.
Old West.
You live,
Old West brothel.
It is, and but it's not a what is it that they call it? It's not. It's the place where your people who think well of themselves like to hang out, right? It's even places. Okay, like sometimes I feel like people who say things like that have never actually been to a small town, or places that just aren't totally metropolitan, because even you go in little towns that are kind of, you look at them and you're like, oh, this place is kind of grimy. But like, there's always nice places. It's like, just because the town is kind of crappy doesn't mean there's nowhere nice in town. It just means the town's kind of crappy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like, I feel like this is the place where the people who have money are spending it.
Yeah, no, I agree. What did you think about all that, though? The costuming, the Twi'leks, the...
Yeah, no, I thought we got to see some a little more variation in the Sand People, right? We got to shake up their look a little bit, which I think is great, because
I think some of maybe the most detailed Tuscan costumes we've ever had.
And you could clearly differentiate the women. There were some who were clearly women.
Chief.
And the chief, he had a particular look.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, there are a lot of Sand People, and they're tribal, so they're not homogenous. We've really only ever seen one group of Sand People, the ones right over there by the Lars Homestead. So I think it makes sense that tribal people are not all exactly the same. So I think that works really well. And I think that the Twi'leks looked great. We've seen lots of different color Twi'leks over the years. I think it's fine to see one that's, peach or pink.
Oh, no, we've always done that kind of stuff in the comics. So That's not a surprise at all that they did that.
No, I actually thought her look was great.
No, yeah. So I kind of skipped over something. The scene where people are coming to pay tribute to Jabba. Mm-hmm. We got some interesting stuff there. We've got a Trandoshan. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we've heard a Trandoshan speak English before. Speak basic before.
Yeah, maybe not.
I do believe that was it Robert Rodriguez that voiced the Trandoshan, the director.
Maybe.
And they're bringing up some things because this is obviously, and this is something I talked about a lot with with the Vision, Star Wars Visions. Mm-hmm. How far can you pull the aesthetic one direction? The aesthetic of Star Wars is a hodgepodge of stuff, mm-hmm. but it's primarily an East versus West, mysticism versus Westernism, and mm-hmm. it's this pulling the two different directions. The Visions goes very heavily towards Eastern philosophies and mindsets. Mm-hmm. This obviously goes very much towards the Western. Mm-hmm. And I think you do have to be careful how far you pull. I think you pull far enough and it's no longer...
There were a couple of episodes of Visions that were like, that's not Star Wars anymore. That's just a samurai movie.
It's just a samurai movie. It's only Star Wars because you put a droid in it. Mm-hmm. A couple of words you used.
Yeah.
I think this remains very firmly planted in Star Wars, and mm-hmm. But there's the use of the term Daimyo mm-hmm. to refer to Boba Fett is we hear it several times in here. We hear Fennec use it. We hear the Trandoshan mm-hmm. use it. Was it the Trandoshan use it, which is just a Japanese feudal lord. So mm-hmm. we're getting we're building how this whole thing works. We've never really established how Jabba's empire worked, right?
Yeah.
So it's a feudal system mm-hmm. with, the lord at the top and all his vassals underneath.
Right.
And so and we even talked about vassals, mm-hmm. so we're establishing, and I like this. I like that we're establishing how this crime lord's empire works.
That's not how this works. I'm the crime lord. He's supposed to pay me.
Yeah. So that was the next thing I wanted to get to. And we have a couple people come in. The Trandoshan brings in a Wookiee pelt.
So creepy.
Yeah. The Gamorreans that I feel like they still don't look, and I don't mind it. They still don't look like the original Gamorreans, but they need these Gamorreans to they want to actually use them in action now.
Right.
The problem with the big bulky look they went for in Return of the Jedi, while they look really cool and interesting, they barely move.
Right.
So they did go for something a little leaner, but not quite as bad, not quite as lean as they went in The Mandalorian, which was...
Well, but the thing is, the ones in The Mandalorian were fighting. They were professional fighters. They weren't bodyguards.
That's true.
And that's different.
That's true, but they still had... They skipped leg day. That was the biggest problem, was they just looked like they skipped leg day.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, if your body's so big, you got to have the legs to hold it up.
I don't know, have you never noticed people, big, hulky people with little bitty legs?
Yeah, people that skip leg day.
Yeah. I don't feel like they're much in the exercising as much as just sort of heaving their bulk about.
Yeah. But I like that, he starts off by asking them to swear their allegiance. Mm-hmm. And I like this back and forth between Boba and Fennec. Fennec's just okay, kill him.
Right.
Set an example.
Yeah. Her philosophy is really simple.
Yeah.
Assert your dominance.
Yeah, right. So it's... And I think that we're going to see him do that when it's necessary. Mm-hmm. This whole idea of building an empire on respect instead of fear.
Right.
Being built on respect doesn't mean there's no fear there.
Right.
It doesn't, it's kind of like the conversation about the angry God, mm-hmm. right? Is it, or the angry father at home? Is it the guy you respect because, there is an element of fear there, and that because of the because he's more powerful and he's, mm-hmm. and all these things, but he's not the guy that's gonna just walk in the door and club you over the head,
right?
So I think that. I think maybe they almost oversimplified the concept of fear and respect. Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to get more complicated.
Oh, it's going to get way more complicated. I think that's the thing is I think Boba has sort of, as his rebirth, has oversimplified his philosophy.
Yep,
And that now we're going to come back and we're going to find this ground where it works.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Fennec's there for. I think they both help each other. I think that he makes her a less just shoot first person, and he and then she helps him kind of keep an edge.
Right, because he's got to keep an edge. There's no being a crime lord if you haven't got an edge.
Right, and I think that's the thing. A lot of people are real upset that he's not the bounty hunter anymore. Not that, but the thing is like, I don't mind all this. I don't mind him reinventing himself. I don't mind a character saying, I don't want to be the employee anymore. I don't want to be, because not just the employee, but the guy that has done the bidding of a lot of terrible beings.
Right. For a long time.
For a long time. So I don't mind this character saying, you know what? I'm going to be the boss now.
Right.
Like that's a natural progression, right?
That's fair. Yeah.
So I am excited about that. I want to talk about the mayor's domo.
Yeah. Okay. He was clearly a comedian.
Oh, the guy's a comedian.
He came in 100%. And it's like, oh, this is where they pulled in the comedian.
Yeah.
I didn't love that.
It feels a little off.
It pulled me out a little bit. And whenever they've used comedians in, like when they used comedians in The Mandalorian, it always kind of fit. But this one was like, it felt a little shoehorned. And he worked.
It works fine. I hated it less on the second watch.
Yeah.
The first time I watched, it really pulled me out. The first time I watched, I was kind of like, man, this guy's a really crappy actor. And he may be, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, he's apparently a really brilliant
stand-up guy.
Comedian.
Yeah.
But it's this whole thing where it just didn't feel right. Now, second watch, I'm going, it feels off because he's being insanely disrespectful.
Yeah.
Because he thinks Boba's the joke.
Right.
So, once I kind of got my head around the fact that this is just disrespect. He's talking to Boba like a child almost.
Yeah.
He's gonna die.
Oh, he's not gonna die nicely either, I don't think.
No,
he's not gonna die peacefully in his bed.
Right. Well, no, Fennec was probably all down to kill him right there.
Yep.
I mean, she was already basically threatening to feed him to the monsters living underneath the pit, whatever's still down there, as part of Jabba's menagerie.
Yes.
So I am curious going forward to see if any of those things are still living, if any of the beasts are still living there in the facility, whatever else the others were. He kind of leaves with a threat. The Trandoshan was almost a threat too, and they even point that out. Like, may you never leave Mos Espa. Like, yeah. It's like, you're not real sure if that's a threat or not. It's just, the way Trandoshans talk.
Yeah.
I do like the, kind of as we lean into the idea of respect instead of fear. He's his own man, and he is a man, and he's not going to be carried around on a litter. We established this very, either Eastern or Egyptian kind of idea that apparently Mos Espa has been ruled by. The Lord being carried around like a god and really doing nothing himself, just sending people to do his bidding.
It's kind of hard to do things yourself when you're a slug.
Yeah. That's one of the things in Star Wars we've never really gotten into how mobile Hutts actually are.
Yeah.
So.
Look very mobile.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they'll show us one day. But, I do like all that. I like what they're setting up. I like that, he's not going to be the ruler that's going to sit on his butt and send people to do his bidding. He's up taking care of things himself. He doesn't need to be weighted on hand and foot. And So I'm liking everything they're setting up there. We get this fight with the. We still don't really know who this group is. I think at this point I'm assuming it's the mayor's second delegation.
Yeah.
I think that some of the vassals may be fighting back too, though, and it may have been someone sent by someone from the club they just left.
That's possible.
So I think that a lot of the vassals are looking to separate themselves from the rule of Jabba's throne there. But great fight scene. Ming-Na Wen got to do some showing off.
Yeah, she's always great.
The rooftop parkour scene was very Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, oh, very.
But I liked all that. I thought the action. What did you think about the action?
No, I enjoyed it. I thought it was great, and I always enjoy seeing Ming-Na Wen bring it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you don't get her to go sit around and
Yeah, I don't know how
Simper.
much of her own stunts she does now, but I know she's still definitely doing some of it. I seriously doubt she was doing any of the parkour.
Yeah.
But the fighting was probably her.
Yeah.
It's kind of the benefit. It's pretty seamless with the helmet, right? You just
Yeah. Exactly.
But we go back to there. Boba is hurt in the fight. The Gamorreans take him back and not so gently throw him back in his bacta tank.
Yeah.
At which point we start having dreams again. We go back. We go back to the desert. I'm not totally sure what the story.
With the green.
Well, no, not that, but the kid that just kind of takes the two prisoners off out in the desert to dig for whatever the things they're drinking the moisture from are. They go to that homestead. We see a gang pillaging.
Yeah.
We see the symbols that I'm sure are important, or they wouldn't have made sure to show us them drawing that symbol twice. I think Roe from Scarif Podcast pointed out that is the Hutties letter K.
Okay.
They were less thrilled about my speculation that Kitster could be the Crown Lord or Freedom Fighter or who knows what right there.
Stranger things have happened.
Yeah. It's probably not Kitster, but
It could be.
it could be. I'm not gonna. You never rule it out. Could be Kitster.
It's true.
So, but I'm not sure why the kid is dragging the prisoners off into the desert.
Yeah, it doesn't seem smart
Yeah,
unless it's some kind of test for him.
maybe. It seems odd. I'm not sure what's up with it. They didn't give us any reason why the kid is taking two potentially dangerous prisoners and dragging them off into the desert. Because let's be clear, Boba has the opportunity to escape by the end.
Kill
of
him
this.
and
Yeah.
leave. Yeah.
So, we do some stuff. We unearth a pretty crazy looking creature that I never imagined running into on Tatooine. Now,
No.
we've always known there were more dangers beyond the Dune Sea, right? So,
Right.
it fits, it works. What did you think about the creature? Because they still haven't told us what that thing's called, I don't think.
Again, it was a little bit. It was cool looking, but whenever I watched it, it didn't seem quite like a Star Wars creature.
Yeah, there's something about it that just kind of didn't feel quite Star Wars to me. And I don't know what that means because we're introduced to new things all the time.
But most of the new things they introduce are from concept art from either the prequels or from the original Star Wars.
That's true. Now,
Stuff.
they can't. The thing is, they can't do that forever.
No, but this one clearly had inspiration from other places.
It did. It looked very much like we do a six-armed creature in the Golden Voyages of Sinbad, which is actually the six-armed goddess Kali
Okay.
from Indian goddess. So we do that, and of course there are things that were Goro from Mortal Kombat is actually almost directly taken from there. This thing actually looks like Goro in a way. It also looks a lot like some of Ray Harryhausen's stop motion from like the Kraken and some other things from the old Ray Harryhausen stop motion stuff. If you're not familiar with Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom series, being like the Princess of Mars and John Carter and all that stuff, this and those stories have always played a very instrumental role, just like Dune and a lot of other things, in influencing Star Wars.
Yeah.
Intentionally or unintentionally, I don't know. They look an awful lot like the Green Martians from the Barsoom series.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I don't think it was an accident. It's almost directly ripped off of the cover of one of those books.
Yeah. So, I think it's kind of
fine.
A mashup of a few things, and it's fine. And after it's there. It's part of Star Wars now. It's fine. It's just one of those things. When I first saw it, I was like, "That's kind of a weird creature." Like it's not a creature that if you showed me out of context, I'd go, "It's from a Star Wars movie." Like,
and it was well rendered, but yeah, they did it. I mean, it looked good for what it was. It was just weird looking. It was a little bit of a strange decision.
But overall, I'm fine with it. I do like the inspirations that they used for creating it. I like that, despite the fact that it's not something we've seen before, and it's not something from old concept art.
Yeah.
But it is something that we have. It is drawing from the same inspiration.
Yeah, and that's true.
So we get that. We go back to the village. The kid's running in with the head. The kid is very clearly telling the story of how he killed this thing,
right,
and taking credit, full credit.
Yeah,
I kind of get the impression that this is the chief's kid, and that's why he's just doing whatever he wants, like hauling prisoners off into the desert.
Yeah,
but the chief walks out, kind of looking at the kid telling the story, and hands Boba something to drink.
Yeah, that I did like that as the ending of the episode.
The kid's definitely taking credit, and the chief's like, is
"You're
not
full of
it."
shit." Yeah.
So I do like all of that. I like where they left off. I think the time with the Tuscans is going to be incredibly instrumental in the story. At this point, though, I'm not sure that it's not almost the better story. Like, I almost am going, why didn't we just do like a 6-episode series about his time with the Tuscans?
Yeah.
At the same time, I know a lot of people aren't liking that. But I think that it's interesting. I think it's going to play a big role going forward. Overall, what do you think about the show one episode in?
I enjoyed it. I mean, I'll watch the next one. And hopefully they'll kind of resolve the pacing issues. That's kind of what I'm hoping for.
Usually shows like this do. I feel like they were trying real hard to hold this one to a certain length, maybe for whatever reason.
Speaking of a certain length, we've been here almost an hour.
We have. Granted, we've been here almost an hour, but by the time this is edited and put online, about 10 minutes are going to be shaved off the front.
That's true. We're still going to be longer than the actual episode.
Yeah. So, again, I mean, I love it. I think that there are things that need to be fixed. I think that it has to get better quickly, or it's
going to be disappointing.
Right. It's like, because it's not enough episodes.
Yep.
That's the frustrating thing to me, is that if we're only getting 8 episodes of a show, I feel like they've all got a hit.
Yeah.
Like, if you get, when you're doing old style TV series and they're 22 episodes, you can have a couple of episodes that are just stinkers. It's probably better not to, but it's like, go back and, all the shows that used to do, just flashback episodes to previous episodes, which was basically just a season refresh before you get to your final arc. You can't do that when you've only got 8 episodes, or like Hawkeye only having 6. Like,
yeah.
And so that would be my biggest complaint about this, is that I feel like you've got a very limited amount of time to do this.
Yep.
And there's just not room to
Make it happen
to have
faster.
misfires.
Yep, absolutely.
And I'm still hoping that when we see episode 2, that we look back and go, yeah, if they had just released episode 1 and 2 together, we'd have been fine.
Yeah. And hopefully that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. All right. Well, are we done? Is that it?
I think we've run out of things to say.
All right. Well, remember, if you're watching this on New Year's Day or on January 2nd, that on the night of the 2nd, Sunday night, I will be on with Scarif Scuttlebutt podcast to again talk Boba Fett. But I thought I'd talk a little about it here because, I may not get everything I want to say in with a larger group of people. So, and I can expand on some things further with a group. So, Merisha, where can people find you online?
You can find me on Instagram at princesses_and_Padawans, and I am P Padawans on Twitter.
Okay, you can find me running the Twitter account for this show at crew_podcast. That's CRU_podcast, not Science Fictionary, which I've had in the corner the whole show down here, but you can also check out Sci_Fictionary for the Science Fictionary podcast, which you can also find here on this YouTube channel or anywhere else that you listen to podcasts. Be sure to check out red5network.com and at red5network on Twitter for all of the rest of the Red 5 podcast family. And until next time, may the Force be with you.